just developed this concept in the last couple of weeks. Perhaps the arts and culture members could participate in the chamber membership, and the town could find ways to support all efforts, and a synergy would develop that would benefit all. After all, arts and culture is often the glue of a community.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to question number 3. What would be your 4-year plan to improve our utilities, water, sewer, and roads to meet the needs of our community? I'll read it again. What would be your 4-year plan to improve our utilities, water, sewer, and roads to meet the needs of our community? Aaron Turner, please.
So when I was doing some research, I learned that Summerland has 651 kilometers of infrastructure that includes sewer, water, electrical, and roads. And to maintain this, the cost was $2.6 million in 2013. So I thought that was really interesting. Moving forward over the next 4 years, I would support doing the projects that are already underway. So continuing to investigate Garnet Valley Road and the water separation project. I think that's really important. I would continue to apply for grants and look for alternative sources for funding. When I was at council meeting, I learned about the gravel pit and how we're leasing that out now, and that's generating extra funding, and I thought that was a great idea. So maybe we could look for more alternative funding sources like that. And then I would also like to establish a capital reserve fund where we can put money into it every year, and then we've got that padding if we need it for emergencies.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Martin Van Elpen to respond to that question, please.
Thank you very much. Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
I would. What would be your 4-year plan to improve our utilities, water, sewer, and roads to meet the needs of our community?
Well, one of the things that I would look at is our urban growth plan. If accepted by the ALC and the people in the area wanted to grow in that area, the landowners, services are there. We don't have to sprawl services. Right now in the Prairie Valley area, we would have to run sewer, water, different infrastructure. The further we go, the more it's going to cost the taxpayers of the future. The other thing I would like to investigate, as we did with our gravel extraction, that gravel extraction is going to bring us in roughly $95,000 to $100,000 a year in revenue. And the other thing I think we seriously need to look at as a council and as a municipality, municipally owned properties. We have a ton of property that we are sitting on in this town, and I don't know why this council is in the real estate business. We should be in governance.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Richard Barkwell to respond to that question, please.
Thank you. It was a bit depressing to hear that a road with my name on it was one of the worst in Summerland. But the reality is we only have so much money, quite a bit of road. And future road improvements will depend entirely on grants from higher levels of government. And it's my understanding you can do a good job or you can do a mediocre job of pursuing those grants. And I think that we need to continue the pursuit of those federal and provincial monies with a new enthusiasm and a new vigor, and outline our case as best as we can. Of course, the gravel pit will contribute a little bit towards our infrastructure, but we only have so much money to go around, and we have to set our priorities for our roads and our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I call on Tony Booth to respond to that question, please.
In Summerland, we are financially extended to the point where it is going to be difficult for us to borrow money. So we have to look at other ways to fund the infrastructure that needs to be updated, including our utilities. However, before that plan goes into place and things get marching along, I think that we need to take an inventory of what it is that we have, what needs to be upgraded, what needs to be improved, what needs to be done. We need to take an inventory, then prioritize that inventory. Rather than saying, okay, we'll do a little bit here, we'll do a little bit there, oh yeah, let's not forget about that. Find out what it is, what is our inventory, put the priorities into place, and then proceed with a plan. There are two ways to save money. You increase your revenues, or you decrease your expenses. Perhaps we should look at that second one more closely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Aaron Carlson to respond to that question, please.
Thank you. Aging infrastructure is not just an issue in Summerland, it's an issue nationwide. And it's not something that we're going to solve overnight. It's maybe not something we're going to solve in 4 years. But if we live within our means, and we remember when we turn on that tap, there's good water in there and we can drink it. When we drive down that road, there's potholes and we should fix them. But there are certainly things in Summerland we need to focus on, and there are certainly things in Summerland that we need to defer until later. And I don't know exactly what all the answers are, but I do know that we're going to start listening to what the people say. And I'm hearing people say, let's be careful with our money. So let's do that.
Ask yourself, how many official community plans have you lived through? I don't think you came here to listen to the John Dorn community plan. We need to reinstate the advisory planning committee, and maybe this time actually listen to it. The idea of planning is pretty hypothetical at this point in time because we have no money. We have to do a better job of going out and getting those government grants so that we can afford to do the infrastructure that we need. And when we do get the money, let's spend it on infrastructure. Let's not spend it on some more beautification projects. We've seen the direction of growth change so many times. It used to be east-west, now it's north-south. We need to have a stable plan so that developers know where the goalposts are and they can continue, so they can start investing in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Joel Gregg to respond to that question, please.
I'm a driver. I like to drive. All these potholes make for an easy golf course. I'm just kidding. I'd like to fill them in. But I agree with what Tony said. We need to prioritize the list of our infrastructure needs. And obviously, this isn't a controversial topic. We have to tackle what's most important. I would like to see the water separated so we're not treating irrigation water, as David Gregory mentioned. I think that makes sense. So again, let's just prioritize our needs and fund what we can, apply for federal grants if available, and just tackle them one at a time.
Thank you. Let's call on Bruce Alquist to respond to that question, please.
Thank you. First thing we need to do is to concentrate on building up our surpluses. Somebody's already mentioned about alternate sources of revenue. We shouldn't always be depending on senior levels of government for that. We have a lot of non-revenue producing assets in this community that can be liquidated and go towards these capital projects of our aging infrastructure. In the next 4 years, I would hope that there's some government grant funding coming forward so actually get that last section of water separation done in the Garnet Valley area as well as restoring the roads. And also, as somebody mentioned about having doing the stuff in order and so on. We have master plans already for most of the infrastructure, and it's already been prioritized. We just don't have the money to do it.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Doug Holmes to respond to that question.
Provision of basic infrastructure is the most basic thing. municipality responsibilities, and so it's very important. And as we mentioned, there's kind of two approaches you can take. You can take it from both ends. One, stop spending money on stuff we don't need. I think there's been a lot of that in recent years. And the other is that we need to grow so we can get more tax dollars. But I would say extending our footprint, creating new suburbs, that's a no-end game, because then you have to create more infrastructure, put in more utilities, and then those are going to age eventually, and then so you have to expand, you have to grow more, you have to create more suburbs to pay for those. This suburbanization has been a failed experiment of the late 20th century, so we have to move away from that to smart growth principles.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Robert Hacking to give his response to that question, please.
Thank you. We must grow our community on the pipes and near the pipes that already exist. We cannot continue to sprawl our community, adding significant infrastructure costs to our already overburdened system. The other thing is every time you fill up your tank, you pay taxes that pay for gas tax grants. It is very important your council fights for that grant money so that when you pay your taxes into the gas, we get what Summerland share is of that gas tax revenue. And that revenue is what pays for this infrastructure replacement. It's important we continue fighting for that revenue and fighting for that grant on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Denise McDonald to respond to that question, please.
I would encourage not overextending on projects unless they are critical to the residents' public safety and health during times of economic strain, which I think we're all feeling. I would encourage to reinstate a finance committee composed of community members with that diverse financial experience to consult with. We've got some pretty knowledgeable people in this town. Build a strategic financial plan that is accessible to the residents. The greater the input from the community, the greater and more resilient the plan. And I would say 4 years is too short a plan. We need to develop a 10-year strategic financial plan. Need for creative ideas to make taxes work harder. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Daniel Papadopoulos to respond to that question, please.
I noticed that Barnett Valley has more pothole repair patches rather than streets itself, but still functional. I heard earlier that the city is in quite a bit of a deficit, so maybe it's do as minimal as possible, but upkeep the main areas. Sewer is very important, I guess. Water as well, water treatment, separation. Most of the lines that were really good and more. In there they were really good, but I don't know the cost of a road and I don't know the cost of the sewer, so all I know is that maintaining something is a little bit easier and costs less than repairing it.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Janet Peake to respond to that question, please.
Thank you very much.
When I've sat on council before, council should have a long-term strategic plan, which is like 40 or 50 years old. And they should have a working plan, it's a 10-year working plan. As others have mentioned, there are plans in our municipality to do work. You need the dollars to do it. You need to build your capital reserve. You need to look for further outsources of money, such as the gravel sales that have been set up through the present council. And you look for other opportunities to do that. The gas tax grant is a very important component of that. When I look at the fact that we don't have a financial advisory committee, I think that a public financial advisory committee is a great source to sit with the committee that works up the budget that then comes through, that we make the decision on. Transparency in how we spend, caution in how we use those funds, and having a reserve is extremely important. We need someone to write grants. It's an art to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Ken Roddicker to respond to that question, please.
Thank you. We have to look at what's being worked on now as far as water separation, and we know we're waiting for a grant for Garnet Valley Road, and Canyon View can certainly needs a little bit of help. And we should be looking at those kinds of grants that we're waiting for in Garnet Valley for these other situations, but also to look at the plan that's in place now with a new set of eyes and see if we can't improve on that. And 4-year plan, that's probably 10-year plan is what we should be realistically looking at for the big picture. If we're going to look at any kind of growth in the future, it should be a longer than 4-year plan for sure. But I would definitely look at, unfortunately I'm not a councilman, so I'm not privy to a lot of what's going on, but let's look at what they've done some hard work on and go from there.
Thank you. We'll call on Mark Smith for a response to that question, please.
The first thing I did when I decided to run for council was I got on the municipal website and I started reading reports. We have an 84-page dam report, that's DAM. And we have 10 dams in Summerland. And there's various things that need to be done to maintain those. We have 346-page water plan report. There are a lot of expert reports. We paid a lot of money for these reports. And one of the first things I want to do is find out where we are with these things. You've paid us a lot. If I get elected, you've given us a lot of money to manage in property taxes and other sources of revenue. There's the gravel pit money. That has to go into maintaining these services that we already have, or they fail. And when they fail, it's very expensive. So that's my first goal, is to read reports, ask questions, find out where we're at. Thank you.
We're going to move on to question number 4. How do you, if elected, plan to communicate effectively with the citizens of Summerland? I'm going to read it again. How do you, if elected, plan to communicate effectively with the citizens of Summerland? Aaron Carlson.
They're going to do this to me. I will start by opening my ears and my mind and listening to what the citizens of Summerland are saying. And I will take that information and I will share it with the other council members. And if I have to make a decision that makes some people angry, I apologize in advance. But I'm not going to go sit on council and say no to everything, because that's not the point. The point is to improve Summerland, to make it better, and in order to do that, we have to actually listen to Summerland, because you know what you want, and I would like to know what you want too.
John Norm, please.
We used to have a lot of committees in town. We need to reinstate those committees. One of the things that came out of the public hearings we had earlier this year was that we have a lot of very smart, engaged, well-researched, articulate people. And I would suggest they'd be willing to work coffee and donuts on any committees. We need to open up our council meetings. Right now, the only time for public comment is at the end of council. So why on earth is there any point in listening to our citizens at the end of the meeting after all of the decisions have been made? That makes no sense to me. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Joel Gregg to respond to that question, please.
Don't ask my wife how effective I communicate. She won't tell you I'm very good at it. But I do understand. I understand the frustration that the community feels, specifically in regard to the urban growth strategy. All I can say is the best part of communication is listening and being empathetic. And I've got an office downtown. My door will always be open. You're always welcome to come and share your thoughts, your viewpoints. And I promise you I will listen, and I'll promise you I will engage in a dialogue with you. And hopefully we can come to some satisfactory solution. All I can say is I'm listening. I'm here to listen and to serve you and not to push my own agenda forward.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Bruce Hallquist to respond to that question, please.
Thank you. Well, we already have information that's published and changed daily basically on our website. We're on Facebook. All the council meetings are all webcast. You can either see them on Shaw Cable or you can tune in to the website and watch the meetings live. We put out a series of newsletters with your electrical bills and that once a month. And there's also been special newsletters that go out advertising things like growth plan and so on. There is a question and answer period after every council meeting. And just a reminder that we are all as close as our phones and emails. And we're all pretty good listeners.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Doug Holmes to respond to that question, please.
Okay, well, we can start by doing some work to the website so that people can actually find some information on it. It needs a lot of work. We have to make information accessible to people and easy to access. And it has to be written in a language that we can understand. We're not all rocket scientists here. We're not all economists or accountants. I would like to see the municipality produce a financial report card that explains to people how we're doing, maybe every quarter or so. And again, easy to understand language. We need a public engagement process that's just not on an issue-by-issue basis, but so we can have ongoing dialogue with people. That might be through neighborhood associations or through the committee structure that could be beefed up, I think, to make sure that the whole community is actually represented.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Robert Hacking to respond to that question, please.
We all want good information, and with respect to Hallquist, our website still sucks. It sucks. You guys want to be able to access the same information that we do when we make our decisions. We want it in a timely fashion and in a format that you can understand and access any time you want. So the website's going to be a process that I will see does get improved. And lastly, when we talk about communication, part of that is the processes we use. And for me, one part process that I would like to see is if something's good enough for an alternative approval process, I would rather just ask you guys to do a referendum instead. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Denise McDonald to respond to that question, please.
Thanks for the question. Communication takes time and effort. And I know in my experience on agricultural issues, especially dealing with the elusive water issue in the province, farmers have to repeat their message over and over and over again. So we need the community, the residents, to tell us over and over again what you want, because I know there's lots of issues in this town. Different sectors have different priorities, and you just have to be diligent and know that we are listening and hoping that we respond to your concerns. So just keep talking to us, and I will, if I get in, I will try to shop more in downtown Summerland. I'll make myself more available. I'll get off the farm a little more. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Daniel Papadopoulos to respond to that question, please.
Can you repeat the question, please?
How do you, if elected, plan to communicate effectively with the citizens of Summerland?
All right, well, you can find me walking around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, or 9 o'clock in the downtown. You know, we have the clock that makes the music. No, I'm just joking. But I'm there. Possibly bulletins or handouts, emails. I think the city has everyone's email because we pay the bills for our utilities and everything. But I mean, a newsletter or something, somebody can get a quarterly information on what's happening in council or what's upcoming or changes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Janet Peake to respond to that question, please.
Thank you very much. I believe that public engagement is really, really important. I know council does a lot of ways, but we all listen in various ways. I think committee work is a really, really important thing, so committees that public work on brings that engagement closer to home. We hear more things from the public. I believe that council should set a strategic plan at the beginning of its 4-year term, that it should have some goals that it's working for each year towards, and they can do a financial report card and a goal report card on the things that they are trying to accomplish and the achievements and the progress they've made along while they do it. So I really have to give a hand to the Summerland Review. Our own newspaper does a terrific job, and if council can assist in some of those articles being more transparent and definitive with information sharing, I think that would help our community as well.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Ken Rodiker to respond to that question, please.
Thank you. As I said in my opening statement, I'd like to create a web link so that you can go on your computer and ask us. It goes to mayor and all council to be able to answer so that you get your answers, and make sure you get your answers. Also, they reserve 10 or 15 minutes at the end of their meeting. We could change that to the front of the meeting instead of the end. You know, just things that we could consider. And I'm downtown every day. Come see me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Mark Smith to respond to that question, please.
Hi. That's a really good question. Effective communication requires me not to be talking about what's going on for me and what I think, but it's also about listening. I've noticed one thing: when council puts out proposals that are unpopular, you guys really show up and communicate. So maybe we need to propose building a nuclear reactor on Wharton Street, and then you guys will show up and tell us what you think of that. But all joking aside, it's really important. The apathy is very high. Voter turnout is low. You have to engage us. You have to hold us accountable. And maybe we need to get town hall meetings. Maybe we need to show up to the festivals and have councillors at a table that are there to communicate and talk about what's going on. And you can ask questions about the last vote and proposals that are put in and those kind of things. So I welcome any input on how we can better communicate, you and I. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Aaron Train to respond to that question, please.
As a councillor, I believe it's important to be present in the town and on the ground, participating in events and shopping local and using local services, because this way you get to talk with people and you get to meet people and listen to their concerns and hear things that you might not hear otherwise in an informal setting. For me personally, I will maintain my social media accounts. I will create a blog where I can talk about issues in more depth and respond to emails and phone calls in a timely manner. I think that council can explore new ways for people to use make sure that they're using sufficient consultation and expressing their reasons for their decisions. And finally, I think that we should provide the public with more background and context on issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Martin Bennell, can you please respond to that question?
I will certainly respond to that question. Communicating effectively with the citizens of Summerland. Communication is always something that can be improved upon. I think we do a pretty good job at Municipal Hall. We're using Twitter, Facebook. There's a newsletter that goes out with utility bills. There is the website. I don't know a lot about that, so I apologize. But we also have put into play the quarterly directors reports that people have come to me personally and said they were amazed on the information that the directors give and how much those departments do on a quarterly basis. People are just stunned with the amount of projects that are always ongoing maintenance. I am always approachable. I'm out in the community and people know they can come and talk to me. And I think one of the confusing things is people like to accuse you of not listening, and that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes I just don't agree. Thank you.